one of those matches where you'd love to see it, but the tough part is, you know, you're not going to be able to see one of these players after this match, because obviously it is top 4, so the loser gets eliminated, which that's the heartbreaking truth of top cuts, especially within Pokemon. It's, you never want to play friends, and if you see 2 really good players against each other, you know it's going to be heartbreaking. So I mean, I cannot wait. I have been psyched. Gabby and Lou and staff have all been killing it throughout the day, so I hope you guys have been enjoying watching with them. And one more thing too, please, 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 !Tiltify in the chat. We are still taking donations for the American Heart Association. That has been going on all weekend. I know we've raised a bunch of money, and a ton of thanks to the generosity of everybody who's donated so far. So !Tiltify in the chat. Continue banging out those donations for this round and finals after this. So I mean, I cannot wait to see these teams. And like you said too, Ditto was such a fun Pokemon to bring. I expected to see it more, but I think we'll be having a couple of really fun Pokemon. Even you and I got to look at a little bit yesterday with some Lapras, but then that Blastoise as well will be coming later.
Really unique Pokemons that get to shine. And we can't see the bottom top 4 matches, but rumor has it that Kyurem made it to top 4, so that was a legendary. I did not expect to see like Kyurem White, so pretty hyped to get to watch that, potentially depending on how the match goes between Ariana and Eshi.
Yeah, absolutely. That Kyurem White is something that I know was putting in work earlier in the day as well. But we'll be seeing here from Fiona's perspective. So Fiona bringing the Calyrex, Zacian, Blastoise, Zapdos, Rillaboom, and Incineroar with a pretty quick selection there. And then Krystal, they will be bringing Raichu, Lapras, Incineroar, Amoonguss, Yveltal, and Zacian. So Yveltal is a Pokemon you don't see all that often in terms of this format. You know, you're seeing a lot more of, you know, the Calyrex or maybe Kyogre in pairing with that Zacian, but I think it's a really interesting choice. I don't know if it has as much pressure in this format, but it really does love staring down that Calyrex, because it can put out a lot of problems for it if it's able to get itself going.
Absolutely. In this, I believe Fiona like main goal is probably get rid of that Raichu, because Raichu's such a little annoyance for Fiona's entire team. But once that little Pokemon is gone, I think it will be safe. But Krystal knows how to play Raichu. It's their pet Pokemon, and they will know that protecting their Raichu and keeping it alive is going to be very important.
I absolutely love these tags. The Lapras and the Incineroar coming out for Krystal, and Calyrex and Zapdos. So this is turn 1 of our top 4 match that we'll be able to see. Really interesting pressure coming out already from the Zapdos, and interesting lead to see, especially if you're worried about switching in a Raichu from the back. But you're still going to have the Intimidate coming down onto these 2 Pokemon that aren't worrying too much about it. But fake out pressure is going to be really nice here on this Zapdos if they go for it.
Oh, the mind games already start. Game 1, turn 1. Calyrex could just go for Astral Barrage. It is a Sash Pokemon, so it will get a hit. It's gonna be hurting a lot. And then Zapdos could try to get the speed control, even though it doesn't really need it, or risk it with the potential Max Air Stream or Max Lightning, depending on what they want. But yeah, doubling into the instant is pretty safe in here. You kind of ignore the Lapras, because it's really usually pretty thick pretty strong, like pretty bulky, so you don't usually want to like touch it until it's out of Dynamax.
Yeah, and with that Gigantamax on that Lapras, being able to set that Aurora Veil, that can be really problematic and make that Lapras even more bulky. There is going to be a Dynamax here on Fiona's side, going to be that Zapdos like we saw earlier, possibly able to put out something like a Max Airstream just to continue to boost the speed of that Calyrex Shadow Rider on Fiona's side, which is an incredibly fast Pokemon already out of the gate, but loves to continue to up its speed so that it can continue hitting Astral Barrages and get those Grenade boosts. Krystal, though, they will be matching with, and what I'm assuming is going to be a Gigantamax of their own. I don't believe we'll be seeing a Dynamax Incineroar once again, especially paired with a Lapras on the field. And this Lapras is going to be able to put out a ton of pressure with that G-Max Resonance, able to set up that Aurora Veil, boost the give itself basically a Reflect and a Light Screen to boost the defense and special defenses, especially facing something like this Astral Barrage from Calyrex. And both these Pokemon take that very handedly. Max Airstream from the Zapdos is going to be going into that Incineroar. It does a pretty decent chunk of damage. It gets it down down under 50% of its HP, and most importantly, gets that really important speed boost here. So the Pokemon on Krystal's side will be slower. Parting Shot, though, from the Incineroar into that Zapdos, going to lower the attack and the special attack, but most importantly, allow for a bit of pivoting here for Krystal on their side. And then you have to assume that that's going to be a G-Max Resonance coming out from that Zapdos, right?
Yeah, I think setting the bells is super important right now. I did kind of surprised there wasn't a double into Calyrex, but Station coming is wonderful. I'm scared. I was like, is Raichu in the back? I feel like Krystal is just trying to play the mind games, and this is terrifying.
Absolutely. Zacian is a very scary Pokemon to have, even if that Calyrex has.
You will go and maybe make a read of potentially Incineroar coming out, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Incineroar actually does switch out for that Calyrex, like you said, not wanting to lose that restricted Pokemon so early on, and also get an Intimidate down onto that very powerful physical attacker in Zacian. But Zacian doesn't want to sit in front of what is possibly an Incineroar or a Max Flare. Going to be switching out for the Amoonguss here, which, if it's carrying something like an Aqua Berry to prevent damage from those Fire-type attacks, is going to be huge. But no Aqua Berry here, will be taking the full force of this Max Flare, but Amoonguss, one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the format, handles that pretty comfortably. The Sun will be set, which would weaken any Max Geyser potential from this Lapras until after this Max Geyser goes through, as it will be able to change the rain. But a Max Geyser into the Incineroar does a nice chunk of damage even with the Sun, gets it down to about 35-40% of its HP, and most importantly, sets that rain up, even though the Zapdos could change that in an instant.
And let's not forget that Zapdos is at -1, so that Among Us behind Screams and a -1 special attack Zapdos is actually really huge. But something very, very important is that there's no Raichu for game 1. That we have seen all of Krystal's Pokemons at this point, which is Among Us, Lapras, Incineroar, and Zacian.
Above 50% of its HP, I think, as I saw that cut, but going to be a little bit tougher, I think, for this Lapras to maybe get enough damage out if it isn't able to take care of this Incineroar after getting the Sun back up. They're going to be, the Incineroar looks like it went for a Flare Blitz onto that Amoonguss, took a bit of damage there, but now getting Spored in return. So that recoil wasn't enough to knock out that Incineroar, which means that the Zapdos and this Lapras, their turns for Dynamax have ended.
I think Dynamax uses on both sides was pretty even. Like, Lapras usually is I do Bail, then I just do Max Geysers, and that's usually pretty it. And right now, Zapdos got a couple of like crucial damage, but at this point it's just like, what do you do next? Like, both of them have to both Zacian is still alive, and Sin might actually go down here potentially. And it's scary because it's your Fake Out user, Intimidate user for the Zacian.
Yeah, that Thunderbolt from that Zapdos into the Lapras does a good chunk of damage as it fires back with a Freeze Dry, showing again that we have seen before it is that Ice-type move of choice, does well over 50% of the Zapdos. Incineroar is going to be forced to stay asleep here, so the Zacian able to come in for free, going to be able to do a ton of damage on this next turn. This Incineroar is not going to get that speed boost from that Max Airstream that Zapdos gave out earlier, so it is going to be able to at least be faster than that. But the Lapras here going to be switching out, going to bring that Amoonguss back in after some Regenerator HP, bringing it back up well above 50% of its HP, and Zapdos now also gaining some HP back with a Roost here.
Yeah, the Zapdos with Roost is actually really nice because there's a okay, yes.
Here we
Sword
go.
and Zacian.
Here we go, and Incineroar stays asleep, not able to capitalize on it either. That sword stance, Izzy, that is terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fiona definitely needed their Pokemon to wake up, get a Parting Shot, just to like make the Zacian a little bit weaker. At this point, it's kind of hard because a Krystal could just go for a KO or another Sword Dance. But like, yeah, this Zacian Among Us duo and Incineroar showing that they're actually not safety goggles puts puts the game a little bit to Krystal's advantage right now.
Yeah, it did show that it wasn't safety goggles. I don't believe we saw a berry either, if I'm not mistaken. It could have happened while we were in a freeze frame there, but Lapras will be coming back in for Amoonguss, not wanting to take something like a Hurricane in this rain here that the Zapdos will be throwing out. Actually goes into that Zacian slot, does very little damage with that attack drop, and the Aurora Veil Behemoth Blade from the Zapdos is going to be able to easily pick up the knockout onto the Incineroar, but instead targets into that Zapdos instead. Still a ton of damage, not enough for a knockout thanks to that Sword Stance here. Incineroar wakes up, goes for a parting shot, able to get that attack stat down onto that Zacian, so making it a little bit less powerful, but it's still a Zacian, so it's still a Pokemon that you have to pay attention to and have to fear. Calyrex will be switching in its place.
Yeah, and this is actually was an amazing turn for Fiona, like Zapdos surviving that +2 plus Zacian or +3. It was very, very important. Right now is Astral Barrage is pretty free to do right now. Even if there's a protect and swap of Amoonguss, there's like Will-O-Wisp coming from Calyrex Shadow. Like the speed advantage right now is definitely on Fiona's side, and she should try getting potentially a KO or try to get for a read and be like, maybe Amoonguss swaps back in.
Yeah, Amoonguss swapping back in could be a really great target if they're able to get something like a Hurricane or even a Flamethrower, hoping that this weather goes. But instead, a Roost is going to keep this Zapdos healthier in the long term, especially going to make it so that I can deal with a couple more attacks. Astral Barrage from the Calyrex going to be coming out here. Going to do a pretty decent chunk of damage to both of these Pokemon. Not enough to knock out the Lapras, though. It just hangs on. Sacred Sword from the Zacian into the Zapdos is not enough to pick up the knockout. Oh, it is. Sorry, had a little bit of lag there. Enough to pick up that knockout thanks to that extra boost that it had, while Hydro Pump from the Lapras is going to go into the already damaged Calyrex, and that is enough to pick out the knockout there as well. No worries about proccing a Focus Sash.
It's actually unfortunate that this ended at like Lapras in an swapping. I'm pretty sure that was Fiona was thinking, oh, the safety goggles is on Zapdos. I just noticed that, but I'm pretty sure that we were trying to, like, you know, right now there's probably come out 1 or 2 turns left of the Veil. You wanted to stall it and potentially reading the swap from Lapras, because Krystal kept doing that, which makes sense if they went with that. But instead, Krystal maybe opting to read that read, or just, you know what, I don't need Lapras anymore. I could just get some damage. And yeah, missing the KO on the Lapras was very, very unfortunate too.
Yeah, and at least at this point too, it's been enough turns now that you can confirm that Aurora Veil is going to be up for 8 full turns. If you hadn't already had that knowledge prior, that Lapras is holding that Light Clay. Incineroar able to come in, I think bring that Zacian down at least to neutral, if I have not been mistaken in counting here. Lapras, though, going to switch out for Krystal, going to be able to bring in its own Incineroar there, so Incineroar going to be able to get off another Intimidate, as Incineroar loves to do, at least getting that attack stat down to neutral for the Zacian on Fiona's side. That does allow for some fake out pressure on the next turn as well. Zacian, though, on Krystal's side, going to use Protect, going to make sure if it does get a fake out targeted at, it's not going to take any issue with that. Behemoth Blade targets into that protected Zacian slot, whereas that Incineroar went for a Flare Blitz into what was that Lapras, which is now the Incineroar. Incineroar able to take that like an absolute champ, and it is going to allow a little bit more recoil. I think almost an even amount of recoil. Aurora Veil has worn off there as well.
Fiona was trying to get the read, and Insane was still there. The Aurora Veil is gone. I'm not sure if she ended up actually run. Yeah, because it makes sense at this point. Yeah, okay, the battle is canceled. She was in a very tough spot, to be honest, and I do believe that she probably was like, wait, okay, I know the lines a little bit better now. I know what to do in game 2, because I actually was watching her stream yesterday too, and she would talk about like how she tries to get as much info when she's in a tough spot on game 1 to come into game 2.
Yeah, and I think game 2 adjustments are going to be really important, right? I think that Zapdos was able to put in a lot of work. I think the issue is it just didn't get the knockouts that it needed. It just didn't have enough support from whatever partner Pokemon was with it, because there was so much switching on the slot next to that Zapdos. Incineroar came in and out a couple of times. Interesting to see too, Krystal, they did not end up bringing that Yveltal, right? Like you mentioned, it also didn't bring that Raichu, so you have to wonder if Raichu ends up being a substitute for Krystal in exchange for whatever the possible adaptations from Fiona's side are going to be.
Absolutely, and maybe Krystal will be tempted to bring Raichu this time. Like I said, there's a lot of mind game skills. Krystal could choose, okay, I will bring Raichu this time because then I will make you more confident about using Zapdos. Or Krystal could also be, oh, you know what, Zapdos didn't do that much. I don't really need Raichu if Nina needed. Like there's a lot of options on Krystal side that because they are a game ahead. Usually there's a little bit more flexibility compared to like Fiona bringing the same 4, which I believe is pretty strong too. But yeah, hopefully the Zapdos could get the crucial KOs because I think that's where it was lacking a little.
Yveltal and Raichu come out this time. I feel pretty confident when I said mid-game there as the leads for Krystal. Calyrex, Zapdos, the same lead from game 1 on Fiona's side. So a very different lead from Krystal's side. Gonna possibly put a ton more pressure onto this Calyrex with Yveltal.
Yeah, and this is a really tough lead for Fiona. And Fiona's I'm just gonna go for it. And I agree. I mean, going for a Maxer stream and a Astral Barrage just to get that Raichu out of the board is absolutely really good turn 1. Because like I said, the Raichu is just so annoying for Fiona's team right now. So once that little Pokemon is knocked out, I think Zapdos probably could go a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, we're actually going to be seeing here a Dynamax on Krystal's side, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So that is going to show a faster Dynamax on Krystal's side. Lapras was a lot slower before. Yveltal will be showing up as that Dynamax Pokemon, possibly able to take some pretty tough moves here, from like an Astral Barrage Plus and Max Airstream, if that's what Fiona ends up trying to go for to boost the speed on their side as well. It is going to be a match of Dynamax for Dynamax. If it's that Zapdos, it's going to be really helpful to get a speed boost. You could also go with that Calyrex. You don't often see it because Astral Barrage is such a great double target move. So the Zapdos is going to be able to get a ton of damage off if it goes into that right partner, but you know that the Zapdos can't go for something like a Max Lightning because that Raichu is on the field being so pesky. Calyrex here going for Astral Barrage, targeting into both of these Pokemon, almost enough to bring Raichu down to possibly a Focus Sash, but Electro Web is going to slow down both of these Pokemon on Fiona's side, doing a little bit of chip damage, but most importantly dropping that speed 1 stage. Yveltal going for a Max Airstream, so boosting the speed itself, hitting into that Calyrex. I could not see, are we down to that Calyrex or was it dropped to 4%?
No. Yeah,
or 4 HP?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's actually really huge for Fiona. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad you caught it because we're suffering a little bit from lag here as the Max Airstream from that Zapdos, getting it back up to neutral, goes into the Raichu on Krystal's side. That is enough to knock that Raichu out. Like you said, an absolutely massive survive to not get knocked out by that Calyrex.
Yeah, this is so good because not only does Calyrex Shadow gets to do damage one more, it's like because Wilda is like the bigger, doesn't have Sucker Punch. Like, did you really? I mean, you get some damage. Even if Station protects here, this is a huge turn for Fiona. Max Flare could go on, or Incineroar could come in. This is so good that the fact that the Calyrex Shadow survived.
Yeah, it's going to be able to put out possibly more pressure. Even if it is at neutral speed, it is still one of the fastest Pokemon in the format. Zacian can possibly be dealing with a little bit of Incineroar or Intimidate coming up, but Yveltal still has 2 more turns of Dynamax. It can get off another Max Airstream at Max Darkness possibly if it really needs to, but it's not going to be putting out as much work as it possibly would be, like you said, with a Sucker Punch, which would be able to get that attack off early. Incineroar though switching in for Calyrex, getting an Intimidate off, not putting that Calyrex in harm's way until this Yveltal is possibly off the field, and most importantly that Intimidate is huge, while a Max Darkness will be coming out into that Incineroar slot, which does handle that far more comfortably than that 4 HP Calyrex would. Brings it down to just above 50% of its HP here, and this is going to allow for a special defense drop as well onto both of these Pokemon, which could be pretty useful moving forward if Krystal has a couple of special attackers in the back. Sword Stance from Zacian though, absolutely huge, like we saw, is going to be able to boost that attack back up now to +2 thanks to that Incineroar's Intimidate, while Max Flare from the Zapdos goes into the Zacian slot. It is not enough to knock it out, brings it to about 30%, maybe 35 of its HP, but gets that Sun up to possibly allow for a strong Flare Blitz this turn from that Incineroar.
I get the Sword Stance, maybe like Fiona might have ignored the Station. But I think it was a little bit greedy from Krystal and might get punished here. Yeah, Protect makes sense. But I mean, you have 1 more turn of Dynamax right now, and I know their Max Flare will put it really, really strong. But Krystal doing the best it can. The Mackellar stream makes sense now. Incineroar is gone. Whoa, was that a crit or just on a...
That Incineroar had taken at least 40% of its damage, right? So it was a pretty strong, plus with a special defense drop as well. Not sure if that entirely mattered, but Max Flare from the Zapdos will be going into that protected Zacian slot. Gonna be able, it's not able to get the knockout through that protect, but so close.
It is very, very close. Here's the tricky part though. The Zacian now is faster than the Calyrex and their other Zacian. I think it's still fine on Fiona's side. But Zacian probably needs to be gone. And I think that I think it cool as long as Heatwave doesn't miss, because we saw that a +2 or +3 Zacian did not kill the Zapdos.
Pretty hard to focus on Heatwave's accuracy though, because the moment you need it to hit, it does not, and that's just the way that Pokemon goes sometimes. Interesting to see both of these restricteds in the Zacian and the Calyrex being at so low HP, 4 HP on that Calyrex, and then the Zacian, it can't have more than 5 HP, right? Like, it's gotta be pretty close down there. So 2 Zacians facing off against each other, one Zacian at +2, the other one at +1, and like you said, that's so important is the speeds, because this Zacian is currently faster than the opponents, but the Dark Pulse from the Yveltal into the Zapdos on Fiona's side is a ton of damage there, enough to knock out that Zapdos, a huge amount of damage. Behemoth Blade from the Zacian on Krystal's side will be going into the Zacian on Fiona's side. Lots of Zacians, lots of Incineroars today, and that is enough to get the knockout there as well. So absolutely huge game 2 from Krystal, getting some absolutely key knockouts moving forward, and that just leaves this 4 HP Calyrex to come in. It's a pretty easy sweep up, I think, here.
Yeah, and it's just unfortunate. I actually forgot that the Zapdos was a -2 special defense. That's what and because of that last air stream, it just put it in ranges though. Yeah, man, those defense boosts. I mean that -1 special defense boost, and I was hoping the Zacian will also probably survive, but man, that was tough. That's tough.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of getting into that tougher spot. A really interesting top 4 match here from both Krystal and Fiona. Really well played. I'm sure Krystal is stoked to be moving on to the finals. It is that tough point though where you get so close to be in top 4, but very proud of both of these players today, and of course our other top 4 match, which is playing out as we have been talking. We weren't able to bring that one to you, but thankfully, as both Fiona and Krystal had capture cards, we will be able to bring finals. For those of you who saw me and Necra commentate finals last time, it will not be on a webcam, so I think that is some of the better news. Not that that was bad, but it was just a little bit challenging from a commentary perspective to give you guys the best that we could. But Izzy, that was a very interesting game, a really nice use of Dynamax on both sides, I believe. Plus, really interesting to not have that Lapras come to game 2, especially because it was so bulky in game 1.
Really liked it. Krystal's adaptation. I think Fiona played really good in general. Like she I don't know if it was a low roll or maybe going for a Mackellar stream just to match that last turn. I think maybe potentially that was the mistake, just giving them the speed control. But otherwise, it was really good adaptation from both, and it was a tough matchup. Even getting rid of the right to right away, the fact that Zacian survived, man. I think if that Zacian hadn't, there was maybe a better time. But I mean, the Zacian survived, the Calyrex Shadow survived, kind of even now, because that 4 HP Zacian was crazy.
Oh yeah, the 4 HP Calyrex and the low Zacian as well. Really thankful, I'm sure, that you didn't have to try and rely on your heat waves hitting plus burns and just working to that end game, because that one always, it never feels satisfying enough, right? It always feels like a tough win. So either way, incredible games by both of these players. We'll be waiting for our second top 4 match